You think you know Illinois, but everything you believe about this state is probably wrong. From rivers that flow backward to cities sinking into the ground, these 50 wild geography facts will completely change how you see the prairie state forever. Starting off at number 50, we have something that sounds absolutely impossible. There are counties in Illinois where the state has more miles of rivers flowing through them than it actually has miles of roads. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine driving through these counties and realizing that water has created more pathways through the land than humans ever could. The network of rivers and streams is so dense that nature literally outbuilt our entire road system in these areas. Coming in at number 49 is the lowest point in the entire state. Illinois drops down to just 279 feet above sea level, at the exact spot where the mighty Mississippi River meets the Ohio River down south. This meeting point of two massive rivers creates the absolute floor of Illinois. Everything else in the state rises up from this junction where these waterways collide and merge together before continuing their journey south toward the Gulf of Mexico. At number 48, we discover that Illinois is so large it actually spans two different time zones. Most of the state follows Central Standard Time, but some areas in the far eastern parts actually observe Eastern Standard Time instead. This means you can literally drive from one part of Illinois to another and end up in a completely different time zone without ever leaving the state. It creates confusion for residents near the border who never quite know what time it really is. Number 47 brings us something that will mess with your head. Chicago sits closer to the North Pole than it does to the southern tip of Illinois. The state is so incredibly long that its own northern city is nearer to Arctic ice. This fact shows just how massive Illinois really stretches from north to south. When people think of Chicago, they imagine it representing the whole state, but it barely scratches the surface of how far south Illinois actually extends into America. Sliding into number 46 is the mind-blowing network of water running through Illinois. The state contains over 3,000 individual streams and rivers that when combined total an incredible 87,000 miles of flowing water cutting through the land. To put that in perspective, 87,000 miles of waterways would circle the entire Earth more than 3 times. All of that water is flowing through just one single state, carving channels and shaping the landscape every single day for millions of years. At number 45, we head to the shores of Lake Michigan. Illinois has 63 miles of coastline along this massive Great Lake, giving the state its own version of beaches and coastal living right in the heart of the Midwest. These 63 miles of shoreline have shaped Chicago and the surrounding areas completely. They provide recreation beaches and critical water resources while also creating unique weather patterns that affect millions of people living near the coast of this inland sea. Coming in at 44 is the geographic center of the entire state. If you balance Illinois perfectly on a pin, it would rest in McLean County right near the city of Bloomington, sitting almost perfectly in the middle of everything. Finding this center point took careful calculations of the state's unusual shape. It represents the heart of Illinois, where all directions balance out equally, and shows how the state spreads itself across the Midwest landscape in every direction from this spot. Number 43 reveals the exact measurement from the top of Illinois to the bottom. The state stretches precisely 385 miles from its northern border with Wisconsin, all the way down to its southern tip where it meets Kentucky. That 385-mile stretch means driving from one end of Illinois to the other takes about 6 hours straight without stopping. The state is so long that climate, weather, and even accents change dramatically as you travel from north to south. At number 42, we go underground, where Illinois hides more than 2,300 caves beneath its surface. These hidden caverns and passages snake through the bedrock, creating vast networks that most people never even know exist below them. Some of these caves stretch for miles underground, with chambers larger than houses. They were carved out over millions of years by water slowly dissolving limestone and creating hollow spaces that remain hidden beneath farms, towns, and cities across the state. Number 41 brings us to watersheds, and Illinois contains parts of 3 major ones. The state sits at a critical junction where water flows in different directions toward 3 separate destinations depending on where rain falls on the ground. These 3 watersheds direct Illinois water toward the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Great Lakes. It makes Illinois a crucial crossroads for water distribution across the entire eastern half of North America, based purely on geography and elevation. Coming in at number 40, we look west, where the Mississippi River creates the entire western border of Illinois. Every single inch of the state's western edge is defined by this massive river that serves as a natural boundary with Iowa and Missouri. The Mississippi shapes life in western Illinois completely. It provides transportation, commerce, and recreation while also bringing floods and challenges. For hundreds of miles, this legendary river marks where Illinois ends, and neighboring states begin, creating a liquid border that never stops moving. At number 39, we find something completely unexpected in the Midwest. Illinois contains the only temperate rainforest in this entire region, located along the Mississippi River, where unique conditions create an ecosystem found nowhere else around here. This rainforest receives enough rainfall and has the right temperature conditions to support plant and animal life, similar to rainforests much farther south. It exists in a narrow band along the river, creating a tropical pocket in an otherwise temperate landscape. Number 38 should make everyone in Illinois slightly nervous. The entire state sits directly on top of the New Madrid seismic zone, which is one of the most active earthquake zones in the eastern United States, capable of massive quakes. This fault line produced some of the largest earthquakes in American history back in 1811 and 1812. Those quakes were so powerful they made the Mississippi River flow backward temporarily and were felt as far away as the East Coast. At number 37, we climb to the highest point in Illinois. Charles Mound rises to just 1,235 feet above sea level, making it the tallest spot in the entire state, but still incredibly low compared to mountains elsewhere. This highest point is so unimpressive that it barely qualifies as a hill in other states. It sits in the far northwestern corner of Illinois near the Wisconsin border, and you can climb it without breaking a sweat, showing how flat Illinois really is. Coming in at number 36 is a fact that sounds like a joke, but is actually scientifically proven. Illinois is literally flatter than a pancake when you compare the state's surface variations to an actual pancake measured under a microscope. Scientists calculated the variation in Illinois terrain and compared it to the surface bumps on a real pancake. The pancake had more ups and downs relative to its size than Illinois does, making the state mathematically smoother than breakfast food. At number 35, we return underground, where Illinois has far more miles of caves than most people realize. The extensive cave systems hidden beneath the surface rival those of famous cave states, creating vast hollow spaces in the bedrock below. These cave networks continue to grow as water slowly dissolves rock, creating new passages every year. Explorers keep discovering new chambers and connections, proving that underneath the flat surface, Illinois is hollow in ways nobody expected when they first settled here. Number 34 highlights Illinois' location, as it borders 5 different states plus one major Great Lake. Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, and Indiana all touch Illinois borders, while Lake Michigan provides water access to the northeast, creating 6 neighbors total. This position makes Illinois a crossroads state, where people and goods naturally flow through. No matter which direction you travel from Illinois, you quickly enter another state or a Great Lake, giving the state incredible connectivity to the rest of America. At number 33, we encounter something that defies nature. The Illinois River actually flows backward from its natural direction because of engineering work completed back in 1900 that literally reversed the water flow to solve Chicago's problems. Engineers reversed this river to stop Chicago sewage from contaminating Lake Michigan, which provided drinking water. They made water flow away from the lake instead of toward it, creating one of the greatest engineering achievements in American history that still functions today. Coming in at number 32 is the foundation beneath Chicago itself. The entire city sits on ancient swampland that was so soft and wet that engineers had to physically raise the city 4 to 14 feet higher, using an incredible feat of engineering. They literally jacked up thousands of buildings and poured new foundations underneath them, while businesses continued operating inside. Some buildings were raised while people still worked in them, creating one of the most ambitious urban construction projects ever attempted anywhere. At number 31, we learn that Illinois contains 3 completely distinct topographical regions. The state is divided between northern plains, central prairies, and southern hills, creating vastly different landscapes depending on where you are within Illinois borders. These 3 regions look, feel, and function completely differently from each other. The north has glacial deposits and rolling land, the center is flat farmland, and the south has forests and hills, making Illinois like 3 separate states combined into one. Number 30 brings us to sinkholes, and Illinois has documented over 500 of them scattered across the state. These sudden collapses happen when underground caves give way, causing the surface to drop and swallow whatever sits on top of it. Sinkholes can appear without warning, turning stable ground into gaping holes overnight. They range from small depressions to massive craters that can consume cars, buildings, and roads, demonstrating that the ground beneath Illinois is far less solid than it appears. At number 29, we visit Illinois' Little Grand Canyon, which is an incredible 350 million years old. This ancient geological formation shows layers of rock that date back to when Illinois was a completely different place on Earth. The canyon walls reveal the deep history of Illinois through exposed rock layers. Each stripe represents millions of years of geological time, showing periods when the area was underwater, covered in forests, or buried under ice, revealing Earth's dramatic changes over eons. Coming in at number 28 is a Great Lakes fact about Lake Michigan. It is the only Great Lake located entirely within the United States borders, and Illinois is lucky enough to border it, giving the state exclusive American water access. Every other Great Lake is shared with Canada, but Lake Michigan belongs completely to the U.S. Illinois shares this lake with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana, creating an inland freshwater sea that shapes weather, economy, and recreation for the entire region. At number 27, we find sand dunes right here in Illinois, along the shores of Lake Michigan. Illinois Beach State Park contains actual sand dunes just like you would find on ocean coasts, proving the Great Lakes create their own beach systems. These dunes formed over thousands of years as waves and wind pushed sand into massive hills along the shoreline. They support unique plant communities and provide habitat for rare species while giving Illinois its own version of coastal dune ecosystems. Number 26 reveals Illinois' position on the map of America. The state sits almost perfectly in the center of the contiguous United States, making it a geographic midpoint for the entire country and a natural hub for transportation and commerce. This central location made Illinois crucial for westward expansion and continues to make it vital today. Airlines, railroads, and highways all run through Illinois because it sits exactly where everything needs to pass through when crossing America from coast to coast. At number 25, we confront a dangerous weather reality. Illinois experiences way more tornadoes than most people realize, with an average of 54 tornadoes touching down somewhere in the state every single year, bringing destruction and danger. These 54 annual tornadoes make Illinois one of the most tornado-prone states in America. The state sits in a zone where cold air from Canada collides with warm air from the Gulf, creating perfect conditions for severe storms and violent twisters year after year. Coming in at number 24 is something totally unexpected. Illinois has its own desert called the Illinois Sand Prairie, where sandy soil and dry conditions create an actual desert ecosystem right in the middle of this supposedly green Midwestern state. This desert formed in areas where ancient rivers deposited sand, creating pockets of desert conditions. Cacti and drought-resistant plants grow here naturally, thriving in conditions that seem impossible for Illinois, but exist because of unique geological circumstances from the past. At number 23, we go deep into Earth history. The bedrock underlying Illinois is over 500 million years old, dating back to times when life on Earth was still primitive and the continents were arranged completely differently than today. This ancient rock formed at the bottom of prehistoric oceans before life even moved onto land. It has witnessed the entire evolution of complex life on Earth and still sits beneath Illinois, supporting everything built on top while holding secrets from 500 million years ago. Number 22 highlights Illinois' agricultural dominance. The state has more acres of cropland than any other state in America except for Iowa and Kansas, making it one of the top 3 farming states in the entire nation, producing massive amounts of food. This incredible farmland productivity comes from perfect soil, flat land, and ideal growing conditions. Illinois feeds much of America and the world through its vast agricultural output, relying on geography that nature spent millions of years preparing specifically for growing crops. At number 21, we discover that Chicago is slowly sinking into the ground at a rate of 4 inches every century. The massive weight of skyscrapers and buildings is gradually compressing the soil beneath them, causing the city to sink lower year after year. This sinking happens so slowly that nobody notices it during their lifetime, but over generations, Chicago drops measurably lower. Engineers account for this in new construction, but the fact remains that one of America's greatest cities is gradually descending into the earth beneath it. Coming in at number 20, we look back to the Ice Age. Illinois once had massive glaciers covering 90% of the entire state, grinding rocks, pulverizing stone, and depositing rich soil that would later make the state perfect for farming. These glaciers were thousands of feet thick and reshaped Illinois completely. When they melted, they left behind the flat landscape, rich soil, and countless geographical features that define Illinois today, making the Ice Age the single most important event in creating modern Illinois. At number 19, we venture underground again, where Illinois has hidden rivers that most people have never heard of. These underground waterways flow through caves and caverns, moving water secretly beneath the surface, in complete darkness, never seeing sunlight. Some of these underground rivers are large enough to kayak through, while others are small streams trickling through rock. They drain into larger cave systems and eventually emerge somewhere, as springs creating water sources that seem to appear magically from solid rock. Number 18 celebrates Illinois' incredible soil, which ranks among the richest on planet Earth. This remarkable fertility comes from ancient seas that left mineral deposits and glaciers that ground rocks into perfect growing medium, creating agricultural gold beneath your feet. Farmers worldwide envy Illinois soil because it requires less fertilizer and produces higher yields than almost anywhere else. The combination of ancient marine deposits and glacial mixing created a perfect recipe for plant growth, making Illinois dirt worth more than gold for agriculture. At number 17, we return to the Chicago River, which is the only river in the entire world that flows backward permanently. Engineers reversed it over a century ago, and it has flowed in the wrong direction ever since, defying nature every single day. This permanent reversal solved Chicago's sewage problem, but created an engineering marvel. Water now flows away from Lake Michigan toward the Mississippi River system, making the Chicago River unique among every river on Earth, as the only one permanently flowing against its natural direction. Coming in at number 16 is Starved Rock, which people call the Grand Canyon of the Midwest. This stunning geological formation in Illinois features towering rock walls, deep canyons, and waterfalls, creating a landscape that rivals more famous natural wonders out west. Starved Rock formed over millions of years as water carved through ancient rock layers. The result is a dramatic landscape of cliffs, caves, and canyons that seems impossible for flat Illinois, showcasing that the state has hidden natural beauty, as dramatic as anywhere in America. At number 15, we explore the massive underground limestone caverns sitting beneath Illinois. These vast hollow spaces exist throughout the state, creating invisible voids in the bedrock that could collapse at any time, forming sinkholes or causing structural problems above. The limestone slowly dissolves over time as slightly acidic water seeps through it, creating larger and larger caverns. Some of these spaces are enormous cathedral-like chambers, while others are narrow passages, but together they make Illinois surprisingly hollow underneath its surface. Number 14 takes us back 300 million years, when Illinois was at the bottom of a tropical sea. Warm, shallow water covered the entire state, supporting coral reefs and ancient marine life in a completely different world than exists here today. The fossils from this ancient sea are still found in Illinois rocks today. Trilobites, coral, and ancient fish remains prove that where Chicago now stands once sat beneath tropical ocean waters teeming with life forms that are now extinct and turned to stone. At number 13, we confront an environmental problem. Lake Michigan has a dead zone sitting just off Chicago's coast, where oxygen levels drop so low that fish and other aquatic life cannot survive, creating an underwater wasteland in the Great Lakes. This dead zone forms when nutrients from agricultural runoff and urban pollution feed algae blooms. When the algae dies and decomposes, it consumes all available oxygen, suffocating everything else, and creating an area where nothing can live in what should be pristine lake water. Coming in at number 12 are earthquake zones that most Illinois residents do not even know exist beneath them. Multiple fault lines run under the state, capable of producing significant earthquakes that could damage buildings and infrastructure without warning at any time. These hidden earthquake zones remain quiet for decades, then suddenly release energy and destructive shaking. Illinois has experienced major earthquakes in the past and will again in the future, but most people ignore the risk because quakes here are less frequent than out west. At number 11, we discover that Illinois underground aquifers hold more water than the entire volume of Lake Michigan. These vast underground reservoirs of fresh water sit trapped in rock layers, providing drinking water and irrigation for millions of people across the state. This hidden water supply took thousands of years to accumulate as rain soaked into the ground and became trapped underground. Illinois sits on top of some of the largest freshwater reserves in North America, making the state rich in water resources both above and below ground. Number 10 brings us to Bald Knob, where the view extends across 4 different states. This high point in southern Illinois offers panoramic views that let you see Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana, and of course Illinois, all at the same time from one spot. Standing on Bald Knob shows you just how far the landscape stretches in every direction. The elevation combined with clear weather creates a viewing platform where state borders become visible and you can comprehend the vastness of the region surrounding this single point in Illinois. At number 9, we learn that Chicago's entire lakefront is 100% man-made. The original shoreline of Lake Michigan sat miles inland from where beaches and parks exist today, meaning everything along the water is artificial and built by human effort. Engineers moved millions of tons of dirt and rock to push the shoreline outward, creating new land where water once sat. They built breakwaters, beaches, and parks where waves once crashed, giving Chicago its famous lakefront through one of the largest land reclamation projects in history. Coming in at number 8 is Illinois' incredible network of navigable waterways. The state has more miles of rivers and canals that boats can actually travel on than any other inland state, making Illinois a water transportation hub, despite being far from any ocean. These navigable waterways connect Illinois to the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Great Lakes. Barges move cargo throughout the state and beyond using water routes that have existed for centuries, making Illinois a maritime state without touching saltwater. At number 7, we examine why Illinois experiences all 4 seasons in extreme forms. The state's unique location at the meeting point of different climate systems means summer gets incredibly hot, winter gets brutally cold, and spring and fall bring dramatic weather changes. Cold Arctic air sweeps down from Canada while warm, humid air pushes up from the Gulf of Mexico, and they collide right over Illinois. This creates temperature swings of over 100 degrees between summer and winter, plus severe storms, tornadoes, and dramatic weather throughout the year. Number 6 takes us to Shawnee National Forest, which contains ecosystems found nowhere else in Illinois. This southern forest has plants and animals typically found hundreds of miles farther south, creating a biological island of southern species in an otherwise Midwestern state. The unique geography and climate of Shawnee allow southern species to thrive here in isolated pockets. Swamps, forests, and rock formations create diverse habitats supporting biodiversity that surprises scientists and makes this forest unlike anything else in Illinois, proving nature has no borders. At number 5, we find where the Mississippi River Delta technically starts, and it begins right here in Illinois. The massive delta system that spreads across Louisiana actually originates farther north than most people realize, with Illinois marking the beginning of this enormous formation. The delta starts forming as the Mississippi slows and begins depositing sediment long before reaching the Gulf of Mexico. Illinois represents the upper reaches of this process, where the river transitions from a fast-flowing channel into the beginning stages of the sprawling delta system. Coming in at number 4 is Illinois' position at the crossroads of 3 major climate zones. The state experiences humid continental climate in the north, humid subtropical in the south, and transitional climate in the middle, creating drastically different conditions depending on location. These 3 climate zones meet and overlap in Illinois, creating weather patterns unlike anywhere else. The northern part of the state has growing seasons and temperatures similar to Canada, while the south resembles Kentucky, making Illinois like 3 different climate regions merged together. At number 3, we go deep underground to discover Illinois' vast coal reserves. The state sits on top of enough coal to power all of America for over 200 years, representing one of the largest energy reserves in the nation, buried beneath farms and cities. These coal deposits formed from ancient forests that grew here millions of years ago. When the trees died and were buried, they slowly transformed into coal, creating massive underground seams that stretch for miles, providing Illinois with incredible energy resources for centuries to come. Number 2 brings us to the meeting of the waters, where 3 major rivers converge. The Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers all come together in Illinois, creating a junction point, where massive amounts of water from across America meet and merge, before continuing south. This convergence point represents a crucial geographical feature, where water from the Rockies, the Northern Plains, and the Great Lakes region all combine. The meeting creates a powerful flow that has shaped trade, transportation, and settlement patterns throughout American history centered on Illinois. And finally, at number 1, we have the most mind-blowing fact of all. Chicago sits on a continental divide, where water flows in 2 completely different directions toward both the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, depending on which side of the city rain falls on. This divide means a raindrop landing on one street in Chicago flows to the Gulf through the Mississippi, while a drop 1 block away flows to the Atlantic through the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River, making Chicago one of the few cities on Earth sitting on such a critical water divide.